And something else that you may notice about this board, if you don't know this already, this isn't my handwriting. This is Debbie. I do write on the board quite frequently, and you'll learn very quickly that my handwriting is not this pretty. And I don't put smiley faces in my notes. Nonetheless, welcome to our Bible study. It is, of course, entitled Finding Safety, and the reason for that title will become clear as we go throughout this lesson. And this evening we're going to focus primarily upon our theme verse. That is Proverbs 18 and verse 10. This verse, I will probably quote it every time we have class, and we will reference it very many times because this presents the basic outline and the flow for our lessons that will follow. It is the verse that sets before us the purpose of our study and the general outline of the lessons that are to follow. And Proverbs 18:10. Proverbs 18:10 reads, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe." The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. And just so you're not confused, I do read from the New King James, and so if mine reads a little different from yours, that's why. But that is our theme verse. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. This study is going to be a study. It's said to be 21 weeks, and I'm going to do my best to keep it right at that 21 weeks. I did so good as to even include an extra week for backup lesson. But anyway, we're going to be studying the Old Testament names of God. The very first thing I want you to notice in this verse is the strong tower that I mentioned here. It says, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower." Before we get into what the strong tower is, note that it is the name of the Lord. The fundamental principle of this class is based upon the name of the Lord. What is that name? There are three primary names for God in the Old Testament. They are number one, it is El or Elohim. Elohim, or if it helps you remember how to spell it, Elohim. Because that's how it reads. Elohim. This term, I say El or Elohim. El is the shortened form of Elohim, or Elohim. So this is a prolonged form. This is the shortened, abbreviated form, and it appears quite often. This particular word for God is a kind of a general term for God. It was not specifically used for just the Lord God alone. El was at times used to speak of Canaanite gods, of false gods. It was at times used to speak of magistrates and of angels. This was not God's proper name. It was simply a term that meant God. And it is a term that literally means the strong, strong or mighty. Now, Elohim is used mainly to speak of God himself, of the one true God. There are a few instances where it's used to speak of angels or of magistrates, but it's primarily applied to the Lord God himself. This base word is strong or mighty. The term Elohim is the most powerful, is the idea there, the powerful one, the strongest one. And so when we see this name, it tends to stress and to bring to our mind the power of God, the strength of God. Secondly, the second primary name is the term Adonai. Adonai is a term that means Lord in the Hebrew. It is a term that simply means Lord. This is also a fairly common term that is used to express the name of God. And they would call him Lord. If one is Lord, they are the King, they are the Master. This is a word that, when it's used to speak of God, they're stressing His sovereignty, His majesty, that He is the Lord, that He is the one that is majestic, and that is the ruler and has control over everything. The third name, primary name, is Jehovah, Jehovah, if you helps you pronounce it a little bit better. This is a name that means literally the I am that I am. You will sometimes see this spelled as Yahweh with the Y instead of a J. This is how you pronounce it a little bit different. It's the same title nonetheless. This is a term that stresses the self-existency of God. This is a term that, most important to our study, and what we're going to address in detail when we get to that name, is this is His proper name. These are terms that are used to reference God, but this name, Jehovah, is His proper name. It is His personal name. This is the name by which He revealed Himself to Moses in the burning bush. This is His personal and His proper name. It speaks of God and of God alone. It is a term that means I am that I am. It stresses His self-existency. That is, He is the God that always has been, that is, and always will be. He is self-existent. His existence is not dependent upon anyone else, and upon Himself alone. He is self-existent. He is the one that always has been. Now, the interesting thing here, and I'll mention this in passing, and we'll cover the detail a little later on. In the Ten Commandments, Israel was forbidden to take the name of the Lord in vain. And so they would not say the name Jehovah. That was His proper name. And so it was taboo. They simply didn't say it. And to avoid cause or concern, when they came to the term Jehovah, they would instead say Adonai as Lord or Master. And so they would read this one, but they would speak that one. Just a little interesting note for you. Because, and we'll discuss this more detail later on, as Mark said, but the original Hebrew did not carry vowels to it. And so since they didn't pronounce the name Jehovah, over time, the actual way, specific and accurate way of pronouncing His proper name was lost because they wouldn't say it. And since they didn't have vowels, it was left to a bit of uncertainty. But what happened was, is they took the vowels, which they knew, for Adonai, and they placed them in the term, in the vowels, or in the consonants rather, but vowels and consonants mixed up. And that's how they got the pronunciation of Jehovah. And so that's just an interesting fact for you. But El is a name that stresses power and strength. Adonai is a term that it means Lord, and it stresses His sovereignty and His majesty. Jehovah is the name that means the I am that I am. It stresses His self-existency and His uniqueness. He is above all creation. He is the supreme over creator still. That is Jehovah. And so those are the three basic names of God, the three primary names. This one is His proper name. These two are titles that are applied to Him. He is Master, He is Lord, they addressed Him as Adonai, that was His name, as well as El or Elohim. He was He's powerful, so they addressed Him as El or Elohim. Keep this basic outline in mind to help us as we go throughout our study. Now, the other thing, this is the names that we will be studying throughout the course of the next 21 weeks as we go throughout this lesson. What the Hebrews would do, and what we see in the Bible, is that they would take, particularly El, and they would take Jehovah, and they would suffix to them, and they would add to them adjectives, such as, you might see the term El Shaddai. They took that proper to that name of El, and they added to it the adjective Shaddai, the nourisher, and they got the name of the strong one who nourishes, the all-sufficient nourisher. And so that's the type of names we're going to be looking at. Is that throughout the Old Testament, these are His primary names, but yet at times, this one, they would add adjectives to it. describe his character and that reveal who he is. And so throughout these lessons, what we're going to be looking at is this type of these names. Those ones where they would take El or Jehovah and they would attach suffixes to it. El would become El Shaddai, or at times you might see Jehovah might become Jehovah Jireh. Very good. I'm not sure I'm going to spell this one particularly right, but it will suffice for you to know what I'm talking about for the moment. That is Jehovah. Actually, I did spell it all right. I'm proud of myself. Jehovah Jireh. The Lord will provide. And so he is Jehovah, and then they address the suffix of Jireh. He is the Lord who provides. And so that is what they did to address his character. Why do they do that? This is part of the reason for the study. God is God all the time. He is all of his characteristics all the time. He doesn't change. He is unchanging. That is a constant theme throughout Scripture. God is immutable. He doesn't change. He doesn't alter who he is. Malachi 3. I am the Lord, I do not change. Therefore you are not consumed, O Jacob. God is an unchanging God. All of God's attributes he's had all the time. Yet at certain times, there would come a time in a person's life where they're going through some trial, or perhaps they saw someone else. They saw some way that God intervened and interacted on their behalf or on the behalf of others. And it was at that time that they saw a certain characteristic of God that stood out more than others. Not that he's not all the attributes at one time, but that one attribute, that one characteristic of God stood out more than all the others. And so they would say, you are Jehovah Jireh. You are the Lord who provides. When Abraham stood on Mount Moriah, having just been spared from offering his son Isaac upon an altar, what he saw more than anything was that he saw the God who provides. He saw Jehovah Jireh. He was a God of love, yes. He was a God of sufficiency. He was a God of justice. He was a God of peace. All those things at that time. But at that moment in time, what Abraham saw more clearly than anything was the fact that he was a God that provided and that met his needs. So he was Jehovah Jireh. That is the purpose, and that is how these actions were applied. And so as we look at these names, and as we go through, we'll look at the names of El and Jehovah, and we'll also look at some of Adonai as well, of these instances with these names, like El Shaddai and Jehovah Jireh, and we will see those characteristics. Because as we study these, we not just learn the name, but what we're going to discover is we will learn about who God himself is. And these names reveal his character. His character in this case as the provider, and in this case as the sufficient one who provides and who is sufficient for our needs. And other names like El Roi, the Lord who sees. We see that he's a God who sees our needs. And so as we study these names, we will learn the names themselves, yes. But the purpose is, as we study these names, we will be confronted and we will see the very character of God and his attributes. And we will learn them. And we will learn about who God himself is. Now, why do we want to do that? For what purpose and what would we gain by this type of study? Question. Note verse 10. Again, the name of the Lord is what? Is a strong tower or a watchtower. It is a place that you could run to and find safety. That is what this verse says. It's a strong tower, or you might call it a watchtower. It was the stone fortress, or fortress in our mind might be a little bit too strong of a word, but it was basically a big rock tower that set out in the fields, where a shepherd would hire a man to sit in that tower and watch over his fields. And if things got bad, or if things got some dangerous preparing the flock, he could alert, and the sheep would know to come in. Or it could be the watchtower that was around the city. To where that if someone was going through and they were traveling, and then for some reason some danger came their way, some great challenge or they felt threatened. That they could look and they could see that watchtower and they would know, if I get there, I'm safe. If I can make it to that tower, if I can make it to that city, if I get within its walls, I will be safe. And I will not be able to be hurt or be in danger anymore from what is trying to attack me or to cause me harm. God is a strong tower and a mighty fortress. When we know of who God is and when we understand His character, especially His character revealed in His name, is what His names tell us about that character, we will find and we will discover that we are safe. That indeed there is no strong tower more secure for us, no better place for us to find safety than in the Lord. He stands alone in that regard. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. And that is the premise of this study, that the names of the Lord that we're going to be studying is going to reveal us His character. And as we understand His character, we will understand and we will know that He is indeed a strong tower, a place of safety and of security. Secondly, there's something else in this verse besides the strong tower part. But note the last part of the verse. He says, the righteous run to it and are safe. There is a safety in the Lord. There is a security in the Lord, especially when you understand His character. This word for safe is a word that means secure. It carries the basic idea of that something was placed up high and made inaccessible, therefore it is safe, can't be reached. Two illustrations that might help you understand this a little better. When I was a child, if mother had prepared a big dinner, she wanted to spoil my appetite, she might take the cookies or the dessert that's sitting on the table out of my reach and put them up on the refrigerator, because when I was little I could reach that high. And they were safe from me because they're inaccessible to me. They were safe. They were inaccessible. That is this meaning of the word safe. However, the basic meaning of safe is inaccessible. But also simply you might think of a safe. If you take something that's valuable to you and you lock it within a safe, what are you doing? You're trying to make it to where it's inaccessible to anyone but you. You want to make it to the point that the thief came in and got to those goods, that they're inaccessible because he could not get to them. There is a safety in the Lord, and He makes us inaccessible to something. And that's where we find safety. The number one way that we find safety in the Lord is that He makes us inaccessible to the penalty of sin. Now, at the moment of salvation, we are the penalty of sin can no longer reach us. They do still bear consequences in our lives, but the penalty of sin, which is death, separation from God, can no longer touch us. We are set apart from it. We are now inaccessible to it. We are forever safe. When an individual repents of their sin, turn away from their sin, and they believe in and they trust in Jesus Christ for salvation, they are saved. That's why I call it saved, is because they're then made safe. And now the penalty of sin, of death and separation from God, can no longer touch them. They're not inaccessible